So we're all hearing a lot about artificial intelligence, what it's going to do to our futures, what it's doing to our markets, our economy, and our lives. Today, I want to flip the conversation into something that is uniquely human that's going to be happening, and it's really exciting. So I'm going to introduce Bruce Thompson. He is the CEO of Urbaneer, and it's a company that works with developers, builders, and senior living communities looking at designing homes that are actually going to be able to help take care of us. It's very unique. I don't know anyone who does what Bruce does. So I'm going to let him get started and tell us about that. And Bruce, as you do, I would love it if you would also share your story about electricity in homes and AI in homes and kind of give us that background, which I think is fascinating.
Sure. Thank you for the time today. Those are some big questions, big shoes to fill here. In terms of who I am, Bruce Thompson, CEO of Urbaneer. And Urbaneer really is a culmination of my career, which started out in the tech world, about 20 years in various tech companies. And while I was in the tech world, I learned a lot about innovation and how innovation gets deployed throughout society. And I had that chance to meet and work alongside Vint Cerf, who's the co-creator of the internet. And back in 1993, he had a mantra, IP on everything, internet protocol on everything. And at the time, we were paying 20 cents a minute to be online through America Online, if we remember those days, 2,400 baud modems. And it was really interesting because I had to kind of reframe how I thought about life and living and what was it going to mean that everything got connected. And so I'll never forget going home and thinking about it and literally staring at our counter at home and thinking, okay, how will our homes change? And so that led to a whole journey, really a 30-year journey, but started out with researching other points in time when technology came along and how did we integrate it into our world. And what I realized very quickly is there was a great kind of analog, if you will, which is a great word for this context, is in the 1920s, electricity was added to our homes. And it was probably the single biggest shift at the time. And it really set in motion an 80-year pattern. And some of the things that I learned, the insights were first, there were social impacts of that. We were going through a period where we didn't have the extended families, multi-generational homes. It was more the nuclear family. And we didn't need as many people to maintain a household. And so you started to have purpose-built rooms, laundry rooms, utility rooms, and that changed homes. We started to build walls differently to contain electricity. So there was a social implication of it. There was certainly an economic implication. And then again, this just idea that we could reimagine life because of electricity. And so that stayed with me. And so when I started through the transition from the technical world into the built environment, which was about 15 years ago, which is the second part of my career, I took all of those learnings with me. And it was a very deliberate move to shift from technology to the built environment because I had this idea that the two worlds were going to converge. The physical and digital worlds were going to converge. And so I kept thinking about, okay, again, what did electricity do to homes and how did we change it? And what really was the positive impact, right? Because with innovation, there's always positive and negatives. So that was kind of the thesis behind Urbaneers. We could bring a new approach where we'd look at the physical and digital, really focus on the resident experience. And that's what we've been doing for the last 10 years. And we've never lost that. That's been our North Star is, can we create a better living experience, an optimized living experience for the resident? And it really wasn't until the last, I would say, 2 years that things really clicked. And it was on the heels of a project that we did with a senior living client where they introduced us really to the future of aging, which was going to be more distributed than kind of a campus-like environment. That was their thesis. And could we start to build these pocket neighborhoods where we could tech enable homes to allow aging in place? And so that project, all of a sudden, everything just clicked. Of the couple of decades of thinking about this, it all came together. And that led to where we are today, which is working on a set of guidelines, which we hope to become a standard for tech-enabled age in place. We think that's the transformation. So now the question, yeah, that from a societal standpoint, that's the transformation for people to be able to age safely in their homes. Now we start to think about technology. You referenced AI and data. So just like electricity 100 years ago shifted how we think about homes, now how do we start to think differently and reimagine the design of homes so that technology is not an afterthought, that we're really purposely thinking through from a design perspective of what data we need to keep people safely in their homes, deliver care at home, and just again come up with a new concept for design and construction of a home so they can be occupied differently. So that was a lot. I think I touched on most of your questions, but please, if I missed something, let me know.
That was awesome. The key is that you're not bringing gadgets into the home to help, like we hear about Alexa and things that are going to help you, robots, things that detect from the outside in. You're talking about actually designing homes that have already incorporated AI, but it was very different than what I thought.
Yeah, I think the critical thing is we have to start with the human being, right? The person. And that was something that I brought from the tech world into the built environment. And it kind of surprised me sometimes along the way is when people were building, of course, they're building for a certain market and demographic and all of that, but it was never distilled down to human-centered design, at least my experience. And what does that mean for the occupant? And then how do we work from the inside out to design a home versus outside in, which I think is so prevalent. And so what we're thinking about it is not technology for technology's sake. That's not it. It's how is technology a tool? How can AI be a tool, again, for healthy living, for healthy aging, help people be safe in their homes? And I think if we think about it in that light, always coming back to the human, their experience, dignity, data security, privacy, all those things really, really matter. And if we keep that at the forefront of everything we're doing, then we'll deliver a great living experience and we're able to have respect for the occupant.
Do you think, Bruce, can you give us any examples? So let's say that one of the main worries of so many people in my age group, the over 50 crowd, is cognitive ability. So being able to stay at home longer, worrying about dementia and Alzheimer's. Is there anything you can tell us about what might be coming in regard to that?
Yeah, and again, back to human-centered design, thinking about how much the environment impacts us at all levels. But there are two important themes or disciplines. One is environmental psychology, which has been around for years. And again, it's really back down to the human experience and what does it mean in things like light, color, sound, all of those elements impact how we feel in the space, right? And how we perform, how we sleep, how we age, how we stay healthy. But more recently, there's a discipline that's related to environmental psychology, which is neuroarchitecture. And there's a lot of research right now about the environment and how it impacts us, specifically to dementia, Alzheimer's, cognitive issues. And there's also technology that's coming that can detect changes in your voice, which might be an early indicator of a potential issue. And that's the key that I keep thinking about is earlier intervention through data is really a game changer. It is transformational. We've not had that moment before where if a clinician, somebody in the industry can glean insights from the environment that you're living in and make recommendations earlier and intervene in your health journey. If we wait until the point where we're having symptoms or we're having to go for specific health issues, often it's too late. The problem's manifested, and now we're dealing with those symptoms. Where if we can back it up and look at indicators of things that we might be subject to, that's the real power. And I'll say one more thing related to this, and this is a new concept to me in the last year. There's an emergence of data co-ops where you can take your data, anonymize it so they don't know it's us, but they know the insights from it. And we can take that data and run it against a large language model, people with similar profiles. And that's where the intervention can come again much, much sooner than traditional healthcare has been able to respond to or provide.
Got it. So I guess one more question would be, will the home be participating in helping us find this early data? You talked about maybe the voice, maybe breathing, and not devices that you wear, but actually things that might be built into the home and then might be connected to other places or partners that are partnering with you. Is there anything like that you can talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. I borrowed this from somebody else, but if we start to think of the home almost as a wearable, right? It should be passive in so many ways. And it can take something like fall prevention. There are sensors that can monitor your gait, how we pressure sensitive flooring that can tell a lot about whether you're fall prone. And again, intervene earlier. Maybe there's things you can change in your home to minimize the risk then of a fall, because we know falls can be catastrophic, right? So if we think about it in that sense, and then how do we create a home that cares for you? And somebody said to me a couple weeks ago, and I like this even better, for decades, home builders have been trying to create homes that people fall in love with. What if the home loves you? Flip it around. And I thought that was such a great way to frame it. At the heart of that is designing it so it can care for you and it doesn't become a prohibitor. And I'll just say one last thing is indoor environmental quality is so critical for all ages, but especially as we age because we spend more time at home and we have issues that can be severely impacted by poor air quality, humidification levels. All of that weighs in to our health journey. And so often we think we're doing the right thing by opening our windows to let fresh air in, but it's contaminated and then we're not filtering it. And so there's a lot of research out there that will tell us. In fact, the EPA has said that indoor air is one of the top 5 pollutants in the country. So when we really put it in that light, most of us live in very unhealthy environments. And there are things we can do to change that, but that's maybe to be continued for another conversation.
Okay. It's really exciting to me. I love what you're talking about is proactive and built around helping us stay healthier, prevent falling versus signaling someone once we do fall. Things like that. That is what makes your home build so exciting. And I do hope that we're going to be able to explore things in more detail to get people more excited about what you're doing in future videos. And I really appreciate your time today because it matters to me so much that people that are living in this second 50 years have a lot more dignity and independence and joy than I think they're currently anticipating or experiencing.
Absolutely. Well, I'm 63, and I can tell you, I want to age very differently than my parents did. And we've talked about that previously. Nothing wrong with their journey, but I think we can do better. And so I've not been involved in something where it's so close to home, literally.
Yeah, that's why we connected, Bruce. Thank you so much. And I look
Thank
forward to
you.
next time.